David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Well, hello everyone. Producer Pat here, filling in for David today, at least for now. At least for the first part of the show. David is, of course, at home resting. He had appendicitis, had to get surgery yesterday early in the morning. He should be back next week. He's in good spirits. He's feeling okay. But he does feel as though a part of him is missing, which does make sense after getting one's appendix taken out. But we have to get into the news because the news waits for no one. And what I want to talk about today is how Trump held a joint press conference with the Finnish President Sauli Niinistö. They talked about the normal stuff at first, trade, security, economics. They both had their prepared statements. But everyone realizes that it's sort of a charade because when it's time to ask questions, no reporter is actually going to ask about U.S.-Finnish relations. They're going to ask about the topics of the day. They're going to ask about the things that they want to ask about. And right now, the topic on everyone's mind is impeachment and the call that President Trump had with the Ukrainian president back in July. And really, at this point, it's not even a question over whether the president committed a crime. It's more a question about how many crimes did President Trump commit and what were the severity of those crimes, and are we as a people going to hold him accountable either by way of Congress impeaching Trump or by way of the voters voting him out in 2020. So all that stuff is, of course, still left to be decided. But the press conference was a total mess. It was Trump going on and on about how this is just the latest witch hunt and how everyone's out to get him. He talked about shifty Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff is, of course, the head of the U.S. Intelligence Committee in the House. And, calling a Jewish person shifty definitely has some anti-Semitic undertones, but that's the sort of thing that we can kind of come to expect from Trump at this point. But what I found most peculiar of all was how Trump would try to be alpha over the Finnish president at times, but then at other times he would hide behind the Finnish president. So what would happen would be Trump would get a question, he would ramble on and on, take control of the floor, not let the Finnish president talk, and then whenever he would get a question from a reporter that he didn't like, he would say, "Why aren't you asking the Finnish president something? We have a guest here. It would be rude not to ask the Finnish president something." So let me show you one example of that, and then we'll come back.
Okay, what's your second question? You shouldn't be asking two questions.
Well, you're going to want to answer.
Do me a favor. Ask one of the
I will, but
Finnish
I think you'll want.
John,
I think you'll want to answer this question.
Ask
sir.
one of the Finnish
And
president.
then can I come back to you because I think you'll want to answer.
We'll talk later, sure. Well, it sounds like it might be a good question. Let me see if I like the question. Go ahead. Maybe for the first time in 3 years, I'll have a good question, and I'll love it.
And then here's Trump doing the exact same thing again, sprinkled in this time with some fake news. This is all a hoax stuff that we've come to expect from Trump.
Go ahead, ask a question.
But the question, sir, was what did you want President Zelensky to do about Vice President Biden and his son Hunter?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, it was just a follow-up of what I just asked you, sir.
Listen, you ready? We have the president of Finland. Ask him a question.
I have one for him. I just wanted to follow up on the one that I asked you, which was,
Did you hear
what
me?
did you want
Did you
him
hear
to
me?
Yes,
Ask
sir.
him a question.
I will, but
I've given you a long answer. Ask this gentleman a question. Don't be rude.
No, sir, I don't want to be rude. I just wanted you to have a chance to answer the question that I asked
I've
you.
answered everything. It's a whole hoax. And you know who's playing into the hoax? People like you and the fake news media that we have in this country. And I say in many cases, the corrupt media, because you're corrupt. Much of the media in this country is not just fake, it's corrupt. And you have some very fine people, too. Great journalists, great reporters. But to a large extent, it's corrupt and it's fake. Ask the president of Finland a question, please.
Okay, I'll move on now. Mr. President, in your opening remarks, you said to President Trump that you had been to some museums today and that you respected the U.S. democracy and encouraged him to continue it. Are you concerned that that's not happening? And my second question to you, sir, is the WTO ruled today in favor of the United States, saying that the United States can now impose tariffs on European goods because of illegal subsidies against Airbus.
That was a big win for the United States, right?
It was.
You never had wins with other presidents, did you? But we're having a lot of wins at the WTO
this was
since
a
I
case
became
that started, I think, 10 or 15 years ago.
Okay.
But
excuse me. Your wins are now because they think I don't like the WTO and they want to make sure I'm happy because all of those countries were ripping off the United States for many years. They know that I'm wise to it. We've had a lot of wins. This was a $7 billion win, not bad.
But I think the question is for me.
So the question, sir, is if you're concerned that the president...
I absolutely love Niinistø's body language there. Like, he's pointing, trying to get a word in. And it's not like he's being like a total pushover or anything, but he's being deferential. And I think that makes all the sense in the world. One, because, he's a guest in a foreign country. But I think it more so has to do with the fact that Niinistö realizes that Trump has power over him. The U.S. is, of course, a much bigger country than Finland, and if Trump is upset with their leader, he could retaliate against them. And he's done that before with smaller countries. We saw him temporarily pull aid from Ukraine, so maybe the Finnish president doesn't want a similar thing to happen to him. Of course, the U.S. doesn't give Finland financial aid, but something similar could, of course, happen. So this was the press conference. It's a total gong show, but hey, that's the America that we live in 2019. So President Trump held a campaign rally in Florida yesterday, and he floated the idea of creating his own propaganda news network. Now, of course, we've all been watching the Trump presidency unfold over the past 3 years. Shouldn't be a terrible surprise to us that he wants to do this, but I think still, anytime you have a president talking about creating his own state-run media agency, that should give us a little bit of pause, right? So yesterday at the speech, Trump was talking about his normal things, how the media is just the worst, they're corrupt, they're the enemy of the people, how CNN is especially bad, and then he gives us this little gem.
CNN is a voice that really seems to be the voice out there, and it's a terrible thing for our country. And we ought to start our own network and put some real news out there, because they are so bad. They are so bad for our country. They are so bad for our country. I go out there and they say, boy, the media hates your country. And it's just a shame. It's just a shame. And we really are. We are looking at that. We should do something about it, too. Put some really talented people and get a real voice out there, not a voice that's fake.
Yeah, and Trump also said that he would get the best people to work in his administration, too. And we all know how that turned out. Not so well. I don't trust that he would be able to get the best people to work at his news outlet either. Of course, there's a serious angle to all this. It's more Trump giving into his authoritarian tendencies. It's more Trump attacking the press. It's not good that Trump supporters just view the president as the ultimate source of truth and knowledge. We don't want to see that. We don't want to see people just unequivocally buying into whatever the government tells them. But I also want to talk about how this is just a sort of a logical progression of Trump's relationship with the media. Because, of course, for the longest time, Trump's go-to was Fox News. Fox News and Trump were buddy-buddy. They were two peas in a pod. That was true for when Trump was running for president, and it was true for the first 2 or so years of Trump's administration. But then, with signs of an economic downturn on the horizon and the Mueller report stuff coming out with the Ukraine scandal, there started to be a little bit of a divide. Trump turning on some of the Fox News hosts, Fox at times turning on Trump. So we have one tweet here I want to show you where Trump turns on Fox. He says, "I don't want to win for myself. I only want to win for the people. The new Fox News is letting millions of great people down. We have to start looking for a new news outlet. Fox isn't working for us anymore." Going on to say, "Watching fake news CNN is better than watching Shepard Smith, the lowest rated show on Fox News. Actually, whenever possible, I turn to OANN." So OANN is One American News Network. It is a right-wing outlet that's even more favorable to Trump than even Fox News is, which is kind of hard to believe, but it's true. And I wonder, why is Trump no longer satisfied with OANN? Maybe they're not big enough. Maybe they're just not ready for it. Or maybe he just doesn't want to go through the heartbreak again. Because Trump and Fox News, for the longest time, they were buddy-buddy. They were two peas in a pod. And then he had to go through that tumultuous breakup with them. And I don't know if he wants to go through that heartbreak again. I don't know if he wants to trust another news organization again. I think he just wants to take the power in his own hands and be in control of the propaganda. Could this be another Trump TV preview? Remember back in 2016 in the lead up to the election, pretty much everyone thought that Trump was going to lose. And I think even Trump himself thought he was going to lose. So there were plans in the works to make a Trump TV. Maybe Trump is planning for life post-presidency. Maybe he expects to lose in 2020, or maybe he expects to be impeached and convicted by the Senate and kicked out of office. I won't hold my breath over that stuff, but I think it does stand to reason that he wants to get his chips in order, so he has some backup plans in case he does get kicked out pretty soon. And let's remember, too, that Trump already has his own propaganda show. It's called The Real News Update with Lara Trump, Trump's daughter-in-law. And It's truly vile stuff. We talked about it a couple years ago when the show debuted, but not since. They're still making that show. They are still making that show. I'm going to show you a clip from it now.
Despite attempts from the fake news to derail the progress made at the summit, the president was a statesman and bravely put America first along with the First Lady.
Yeah, so truly vile stuff here. But hey, if Trump wants to have more than just one show, if he wants an entire network for himself, maybe everyone in his family can have their own show. So like Don Jr. can have a show, and Eric can have a show. Maybe Tiffany Trump can have her own show. We'll see how this all works out. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. After the break, we're going to David taking live calls and David answering audience questions. It's stuff that we had prepared from earlier in the week. This is the last footage that you'll be able to see of David with an appendix intact. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the show today. Thanks for tuning in.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Today's new members of the day are Vanessa Arison and Julia Rinaldi. Vanessa and Julia, appreciate your support so much. Also want to say thanks to today's longtime sustaining member of the day, Margaret Elizabeth Onodera, who has been with us almost 5 years. Step 1, become a member. Step 2, stay a member. You can do it all at www.joinpakman.com. Let's see what's on people's minds. We will take some calls at 617-830-4750. We will start today with our caller from the 951 area code. Caller from 951. Who's this? Where are you calling from? Hello? 951, I heard you briefly, and then now it sounds like you're gone. All right, very weird. Let's go next to our caller from the 305 area code. Who's calling today from 305?
Hey, David, this is Brian.
Hey, Brian.
Hey, what's going on? So, I wanted to ask you, how well would you say you have gauged the average Trump voter from 2016's outlook on the election? Because I personally was eligible in 2012 to vote for Obama or Romney or whatever. I was 18 at the time. I didn't vote, and I really wasn't very interested in the whole polarization of really supporting Obama to reelect him or going for Romney.
Yeah.
So I sat out the midterms in 2014, and then I ended up voting for Trump in 2016 simply because I didn't really want another Clinton in there, and he was saying all this stuff about not wanting to get into wars and these things, and pretty much as soon as he bombed Syria, I kind of just regretted the whole decision, and then just in spite, I just voted straight Democrat on the midterms. Although I'm not a Democrat, I'm an independent, and I have some problems with the Democratic Party.
Okay, but so Brian, are you a conservative guy or are you more of a progressive guy?
I would say I'm pretty much just a little bit of everything. I mean, I come from a family that is traditionally religious, but my grandfather supported socialist leaders throughout his life.
Right, but what I guess I'm trying to get at is like on tax policy. Do you think that the rich should get a tax cut? Is that something you support?
Not necessarily. No.
Well, I'm asking you in practice, do you support the fact that that's what Donald Trump did? Did you support that?
No, I didn't support that.
And do you agree with Donald Trump's strategy with North Korea, for example?
No, I don't at all.
Do you like the China tariffs?
No.
Okay, so I mean,
I
just don't get why you'd vote for Trump.
No, I'm not. Like, that's what I was about to say. I'm for sure not going to vote for Donald Trump again. I've already decided that, like, in 2017.
Got it.
But I don't feel that enthusiastic about voting Democrat at all. So I may just movements.
All right, Brian, I'm going to let you go. It sounds like you got a lot going on in the background there. If you don't want to vote, I guess don't vote. I would encourage you to vote. I think voting is good, and it's good that you're not voting for Trump. Let's go next to our caller from the 760 area code. Who's calling today from 760?
I think that's me, David.
Yes, it is.
Hi, my name's Marshall. I'm actually in Orlando, Florida right now.
All right, I can barely hear you. It sounds like you're sort of underwater. Are you using a Bluetooth headset right now?
I shouldn't be. Let me try something. It'll just take me 2 seconds. Hold on.
Yeah.
Can you hear me better now, David?
Yes, I can.
Okay, hi. My name's Marshall. I'm from Orlando, Florida. Did you get that?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so I'm doing a bit of an academic project. I consider myself an objectivist, and so I'm kind of trying to get the best critiques of objectivism that are out there. I know, obviously, you're probably somebody who doesn't agree with objectivism, and the Randian variety. I've been trying to scour the internet looking for the best, systematic, academic-based takedowns of her philosophy. Have you seen anything? Could you point me to the best actual critique instead of not ad hominem attacks on her character or half-baked attempts? Of specific things,
I've not taken a deep dive into critiques of objectivism. So, I mean, I would be shocked if you were to Google, and including if you go to Google Scholar and search for critiques of objectivism, I'd be shocked if it was ad hominems about Ayn Rand.
Right. So it's mainly the internet articles I should avoid, the new journals and or major news websites and stuff like that. Actually look for academic critiques.
Well, if you said you were looking for an academic critique, so if that's the case, I would look on Google Scholar.
Google Scholar, okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, David.
All right, thank you for the call, Marshall. Appreciate it. Let's go next to our caller from the 410 area code. Who's calling today from 410?
Hi, David. I believe that's me.
Yes, it is.
Okay, this is Andrew. Can you hear me?
I can. What kind of a device do you have us on? Because it sounds weird, Andrew. I'm not going to lie.
Okay, how about now?
It's much better, yes.
Okay, perfect. I had a question. Now that the Q3 finance information about several campaigns has come out, I was wondering if your analysis or predictions have changed at all about the Yang campaign. I'm kind of undecided, but the exponential growth was kind of shocking to me. I didn't expect him to reach double digits. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
You reach double digits in what?
In terms of millions, he just announced that they raised 10 million for Q3.
Got it. No, I thought you were talking about double-digit polling. Yeah, I mean, listen, he's running a good campaign. Until there's that one Emerson poll that says Yang has 8%. No other poll says that. If we start seeing more polls that say that, then I will start to believe it. I don't have any particular insight into this is what we're seeing in terms of fundraising. This is what we're seeing in terms of polling. This is what we're seeing in terms of debate performance. And we're all kind of in it together trying to figure it out. But he's certainly running a solid campaign.
Right, definitely. I'm curious to see how the increased numbers, if it changes the polling at all, because I know he's yet to really break above 3% nationally on average.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it goes. But thank you. I appreciate your insight.
All right. Thank you for the call. I appreciate it. Let's go next to our caller from the 214 area code. Who's calling today from 214?
David, is that me?
It is.
David, I had some thoughts about the superdelegate situation. Is there any way that this is going to positively impact Bernie? Because I know it's not going to. And is there any way we can fix this superdelegate issue? Because I think they're really going to negatively impact Bernie.
Well, there's already been some changes. All right, listen, you've got me on a 5-second delay on a huge speaker, so we're just going to do away with that. Listen, the DNC has made changes to the way that superdelegates will work. They're not going to vote on the first round. We've already gone through. Is there a way in which it could still hurt Bernie? Yes, it is conceivable. Is there a way it could hurt a different candidate? It is also conceivable. But the whole point of the changes supposedly was to give the people more of a chance to just decide outright on the first ballot. The question is, if it goes to a second ballot, then what is going to happen in terms of the superdelegate impact? Let's go, where do we want to go next? Let's go to the 571 area code. Who's calling today from 571?
Hi, David. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right, hi. This is Krishnan from Northern Virginia.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good.
So I wanted to talk to you about. So I want to get this out just forthright. I'm an Elizabeth Warren supporter. I started off supporting her. Then when she was not doing well in the polls, I decided to switch to Bernie. But when she started gaining momentum, I was like, yeah, I really connect with the way she's messaging and her policies and her approach to her campaign.
Okay.
And so I'm solidly with her.
Got it.
So the thing I wanted to address is, first of all, I really appreciate your very fair and objective critiques, analysis of, and comparisons with her and other candidates. But one thing I wanted to address is people say that one critique of Warren that I hear over and over again is that she's going to take big money, corporate money in the general election, which she admitted if she gets a nomination, which she admitted to. I agree about that. But they say Bernie won't. And you said that too. And I haven't seen any source that says that he will not take big money in the general election, because he did take big money as a Senate candidate in 2018, just as Warren did. In fact, he and Warren raised the same amount in large dollar donations in 2018, and they transferred the same amount to their presidential campaigns.
Correct.
So I'm not sure why we're saying. I just want to get it out that we should be very fair in comparing those two. Have you seen anything that contradicts what I'm saying, or do you agree?
Well, listen, I don't have a source in front of me. So my understanding was that previously Bernie Sanders had said he will not take the money at any level of the campaign. Now, it sounds like what you're saying is you've not seen that said definitively, and so therefore it would not be illogical to presume that he might in the general election, but he's simply not talking about it. Is that more or less what you're suggesting?
Yeah. That's what I'm suggesting. And what I'm saying is, if he did not take that pledge, if he did the same thing Warren did, like leave it open in the general, I would be okay with that, because general elections are extremely expensive, and Trump is going in with a massive fundraising advantage. Well, what do you think about that? I know I've said
before that I think it is great for candidates to decide not to take money of whatever sources they don't want to take it at any point. I do think that in the general, it's not crazy to make the argument that if you unilaterally disarm by saying, I'm not going to take the money, that you are setting yourself up to lose, and then we're all worse off because then Trump gets reelected. So I don't have a super strong position one way or the other. I can see both sides of it, but I'm not someone who's going around smearing Warren because she plans to do it in the general. I think that you greatly diminish your chances of winning if you don't.
I completely understand, and thank you very much for that. And yeah, all right, that's it. That's what I wanted to know.
All right, thank you. Appreciate the phone call. Great to hear from you. Let's go next to Joey in Chicago. We haven't heard from Joey in Chicago since May.
Hey, David. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. So I just want to get your thought. Do you think there's any chance that Donald Trump would resign?
I mean, I've said before, I think if someone sits him down and it's really getting bad and someone says, you are going to be removed, I think it's possible that he would, but I think that his ego would make him hold out until the absolute last possible second.
Yeah, for sure. That's what I was thinking. Just because, you see everything happening and like how bad it is getting. And, I just watched one of your videos about all the GOP people that, are backing impeachment. Yep. And it's like, he's eventually going to run out of Republicans, hopefully. And then,
well, remember, the story I did was that there's the idea that if the impeachment vote, if the conviction vote were private, Republicans might support it, but it's not private. So I don't actually think you're going to see Republican support his removal.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, yeah, that's it, man. Thanks a lot for everything that you do.
Okay, Joey in Chicago. Great to hear from you. Let's go next to our caller from the 719 area code. Who's calling today from 719?
Hi, David. Is this me?
Yes, it is.
Hey, David. So I was hoping to ask you about a video you made a couple of days ago where you were debating which drugs should and should not be legalized.
Yes.
And I guess my main question about that video is that if we don't completely legalize all drugs, even cocaine and heroin and things like that, doesn't that leave the cartels in a position to still make tens of billions of dollars every year and subject the nations of Central and South America to, their whims? And doesn't that leave them in power?
It does. I mean, so the best two arguments for legalizing everything recreationally in my mind are you still have a black market and cartels wielding a lot of power if something is decriminalized but still not legalized. And you can control the production such that people are using safe stuff, regulated stuff, if you legalize it. So, yeah, I mean, those are the strongest arguments for legalization. It is hard for me with something that is just as objectively destructive as heroin or cocaine. It's hard for me to say this should be a recreational thing in the way that marijuana or maybe even some hallucinogenics should be. I'm just not there yet. But as I've said before, my position on this is iterating.
Okay, awesome. Well, David, thank you so much for your time. And I got to tell you, man, you're like one of my favorite people, in the public spectrum right now.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for the call. And on that note, let's take a quick break. If you're holding, don't hang up because we will get to more calls right after this.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
All right, let's go back to the phones and see what's on folks' minds. Let's go to our caller from the 952 area code. Who's calling today from 952?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hey, David. So my question was, so given all of the sort of recent events that have occurred in the news cycle, such as like the whistleblower complaint against Donald Trump and all of the individuals that are implicated in this complaint, such as Mike Pompeo and William Barr, and the fact that there's even a cover-up associated with some of the calls that Trump has made, Trump still seems to maintain about a 40% approval rating. I mean, what do you think the reason is that people still will ardently defend him, and what do you think it would take for voters or supporters of his to finally flip?
I don't think that. So here's the thing. He has a floor of support. I don't know if it's like 27 or 26 or 32 or something like that, who will never flip. It doesn't matter what he does. As he has said, if he shot someone on Fifth Avenue, they still wouldn't flip. You can then add to that Republicans who just really hate Democrats and are just going to say they approve of the job that Donald Trump is doing. So you're going to have that group. And then you've got people who are just not super keyed in and they lack information about what's going on. And it's just sort of like, yeah, I guess my life's not bad, so I guess I approve. And that's how you get yourself to 40% with a president that is this embroiled in scandal and potential criminality and immorality. That's how it's constructed.
Right. It almost seems like unprecedented, though, in the sense that it doesn't seem like any other candidate has enjoyed the kind of support or the kind of base that Trump has. Like, it's almost like a religious sort of fervor that his base has for him. Like, what do you think that is? Like, what do you think that comes from? Like,
I think that I don't know that it's that unique, maybe to this degree, but it's like George W. Bush's approval rating did go very low at one point, but he had a base and then it recovered very quickly. Barack Obama's approval never went below a certain level, and it wasn't tested whether he had an unflinching base. So I don't know that it's that unique in the hyper-partisan 2019, but there's definitely people who are just, they love Trump. That's it.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to get at too is, I mean, there's so much clearly wrong with Trump, and there's so much manifestly just disorganized in his mind, and like he just seems like a very unwell person. That,
yes.
At the very least, you could say George W. Bush has a veneer of being at least a normal human being with a functioning mind.
Right.
But you can't really say the same about Donald Trump. It just seems very odd that people can love someone that's so clearly just a deluded narcissist. It just doesn't make sense.
I completely agree with you. And, what I would suggest is go talk to some of those people who support him and listen to the answers they give you, and you'll very quickly understand what's going on.
Right. Funny you say that, because my grandfather is a big Trump supporter. Trying to bring it up, just don't, in family situations to make things awkward. But I get a sort of like, there's a cynicism in his support, right? That everything is just so bad that at least Trump is honest about everything being so bad, if that makes any sense. Like, and that there's almost like an emotional connection to that sort of hate for the establishment. And I think like sort of mainstream is like the right word I'm looking
There's
for.
definitely the idea of Trump as the guy who's trolling people, and some contingent of his likes that, and that's also extraordinarily disturbing.
Right. And sorry if I'm taking up too much time, but just one last statement. I think too is that there's like the sort of like the older generation sort of sees like the young up and coming Democrats as sort of like a threat. It sort of almost seems like in a sense like a dying gas of like the silent generation kind of trying to cling on to power and keep things as the way they were.
That's interesting. That may be, but we won't know for like another 15 years.
Right. All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate the phone call. Great to hear from you. Let's go next to our caller from the 224 area code. Who's calling today from 224?
Hey, is this me?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Hey, David. I was talking to my friends about foreign policy, especially in regards to Iran.
Yeah.
And how the Trump administration has been saber-rattling pretty much their entire time.
Yes.
And Bolton being gone is a bit of a reassurance, but with this fiasco with the oil fields in Saudi Arabia, and they're placing U.S. troops to guard those oil fields almost like bait.
Yeah.
It seems like we're continuing to build up. Now, I heard that since war with Iran is such an unpopular idea, the Trump administration is actually waiting until after re-election. Do you think that's possible?
That's totally possible. It's also possible that Donald Trump, Trump doesn't always listen to advice. He may say, oh, a war will help me win re-election in 2020. So we shouldn't underestimate the possibility that he would escalate sooner as a result of that. But yeah, initially when people saw Bolton leaving, who were saying, oh, now there's no chance of a war with Iran. No. It could be under different circumstances. It could be motivated in different ways. But I don't think that threat of war with Iran is gone now that John Bolton is gone. I completely agree with you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it. It sounded like he was on speaker, but it was good enough. I figured I wouldn't interrupt with that. Let's go next to our caller from the 281 area code. Who's calling today from 281?
Hello, is that me?
Yes, it is.
Okay, hello, David. My name is Mauricio. How are you doing today?
Good, thank you.
I wanted to ask you just a more fun question, if that's all right.
Sure.
So I'm a Spanish major at University of Houston, and as someone who's really interested in linguistics, I was wondering if whenever you've interacted with Spanish speakers, either from the United States, Mexico, more North America, do they have trouble understanding your Argentinian accent at all?
No, because I modulate my my vocabulary so that it is easier for them to understand. So instead of saying vos, I say tú, and I conjugate the way that they would be used to. So, I'm modulating my Spanish when I know that I'm speaking to a non-Argentinian.
And when you so I think the double L, it has a Y noise.
Oh yeah, I don't do that. I don't do that. I don't do that. That's too ingrained. I can't do that.
See, for me, I have a hard time understanding the Argentinian accent just because of that, because it's such a different noise than the Y noise that I'm used to.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'm watching a show on Netflix right now called, in English, they've translated it as Money Heist. It's a Spanish show, from Spain. And there's a lot of Spanish slang and fast talking. And I have trouble understanding that. I put the Spanish subtitles on to be able to see what they're saying, because that's very unclear for me. But Argentinian Spanish, just because it's what I grew up around, is super easy to understand.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear. Okay, thank you for answering my question, David. Have a good day.
All right, you too. Thank you for the call. Let's try the 417 area code next. Who's calling today from 417?
Hey, David, this is Tyler.
Hey, Tyler, what's up?
Okay. So this is the 75th anniversary of FDR's 1944 address to Congress where he introduced the Second Bill of Rights and Economic Bill of Rights.
Mm-hmm.
Bernie, of course, in June, he called for a 21st century Economic Bill of Rights. What do you think about the value of having an actual declaration of economic rights that could be committed to by representatives, citizens, organizations, as a unifying expression of what the Democratic Party and Democrats are supposed to stand for?
It would be delightful, but it would also be the type of thing that very rarely actually makes change happen. So that's my only hesitation. I mean, I love all that stuff. It's great to put pen to paper and say, this is what we're for and this is what we believe in. But at the same time, show me exactly how it'll make change happen. And I don't know if it will.
So what do you think would be the challenges in terms of something like that actually making a difference? Of course, we have many of these pledges throughout history. Recently, the Sunrise Movement with their No Fossil Fuel Money pledge seems to be having an impact. Some pledges have an impact. Many of them have absolutely no impact.
Yeah.
But yeah, this idea of trying to have something, that serves as a straightforward litmus test, the Democratic Party, in my mind, in no way has resembled FDR's party, in no way resembles a Nordic model-esque social democratic party.
Right.
And so what would be the challenges, something like this?
Well, listen, in the end,
changing that?
The declaration needs to come with controlling the White House, the House of Representatives, and the Senate. I mean, that's how you're going to get change. You take control, you outline your values and priorities, and then you make it happen. And, it's like the sad reality is if the Senate is controlled by Republicans and Democrats sign on and say, this is our vision, okay, who cares? And it's like, I'm not being cynical. I'm just trying to be a realist here. And this is not me saying, oh, it's stupid online petition culture. Petitions don't matter. I'm not saying that in any way. I'm just saying there are elements of the system that we know how it is that you change them. And we've got to control the White House, the House of Representatives, and the Senate in order to make it happen.
Right. That makes sense.
Not to mention that not all Democratic... It's important also, not all Democrats in the House and Senate are on the same page on every issue, and that's another obstacle.
Yeah, that's where I think it would be an upfront litmus test, like maybe a way of creating greater pressure. I mean, it's great that Bernie Sanders comes out with a call for a 21st century Bill of Rights, but he's one candidate and it's one platform.
Right.
That's not inviting the American people. It's not inviting other candidates, other representatives to sign on board. So that was the thought, that maybe this would be a means of getting a lot more pressure on Democratic candidates or incumbents to actually commit to a common expression of what their party is supposed to be about.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. But besides the practical problem, there's also then you get people who want to put in stuff that's a little bit loony, and then it's then people shy away from it, and it just becomes its own problem too. But it's an interesting idea. I appreciate the call.
Okay, thank you.
All right, take care. Let's go to our caller from the 423 area code. Who's calling today from 423?
Howdy, sir. This is Bobby from Tennessee. I got you on Bluetooth. I hope that's all right.
It doesn't sound great, Bobby, but we'll do it.
All right. Thank you very much. Hey, first of all, I just wanted to say that whoever was calling earlier about they don't understand why Trump gets the amount of support that he does.
Yeah.
Look, it's team sport down here. I live in rural Tennessee, and as long as you got a D next to your name, they're going to vote against you and they're going to hate you. It doesn't matter, right?
Right.
But overall, for the Democrats for the impeachment inquiry, the Democrats need to stop letting Republicans make mistakes, right? The Republicans go to make a mistake, and then Nancy Pelosi comes out and she says, hey, you better not do that. No. Follow Napoleon's quote, never interrupt your enemy while they're in the middle of making a mistake. Right? So let them perjure themselves, let them hide evidence, let them do it all, and then just nail them to the cross. But the Democrats have to grow a spine, and they're going to have to hold people in inherent contempt. They're going to have to cut their paychecks, they're going to have to get nasty because it's team sport for these guys. And, and they just don't care. So that was it. I just wanted to give a little spiel about that. I hope you have a good day, sir.
All right, thanks. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, listen, what's the point of an impeachment inquiry and request to appear and subpoenas and the entire thing if they ignore them and there's no consequences? It's completely pointless. And my commentary earlier this week said literally exactly that. Grow a spine. Yes, I mean, I think that's not completely unfair language to use, but it's if we don't see the co-equal branch of government assert its constitutional duties and powers, then they're just going to get away with it the way they've gotten away with it all along, other than, some token people, Michael Cohen or Flynn or whatever else. So Bobby from Tennessee is absolutely spot on. Sorry I didn't get to everybody who's holding. We will take more calls next week. I will take a quick break and be back with much, much more right after this.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Okay, let's get into audience questions for the week. Very timely one. Hey, David, even if the Joe Biden's conspiracy isn't literally true, as Republicans say, isn't it still extraordinarily corrupt that Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, is working for a Ukrainian gas company and getting paid $50,000 a month? So, yes, I mean, here's what you have to distinguish, and this is, so I'm going to take the question as being a good faith question, because I do see a lot of bad faith right-wing actors saying the real corruption is Biden's son. And then I also see some good faith left-wing actors saying, wait a second, I am reading that it is corrupt what was going on with Joe Biden and Hunter Biden in Ukraine. So here's the deal. We have a system that is a system built on the status quo, revolving door, business, politics, lobbying, cronyism, consultancy. That's the system that we have. And in this system, you have kingmakers in politics and lobbyists and elected officials and campaign consultants and all of these faux, bogus consultancy positions that are made available to connected people, not because of their knowledge or skills, but because of their connections. Like, that exists and that's a thing. So I'll give you an example. Paul Ryan, the former Republican Speaker of the House, as I mentioned earlier this week, is now on the board of Fox News. What does Paul Ryan really know about being on the board of a media company? Well, you could say, well, he did deal with the FCC as a member of Congress or this or that or whatever the other thing. But this is just an example of what we are talking about. It is the revolving door of people between politics and industry and all of that sort of stuff. So when you see Joe Biden having a son, Hunter Biden, who's getting paid reportedly $50,000 a month to be an advisor or whatever to this Ukrainian gas company, it is absolutely an example of the money buys you, money and connections get you connections and money status quo that we have. It is an example of that. It is not any particularly acute instance of what Joe Biden is being accused of, which should change the focus of the entire story from what Donald Trump did in withholding hundreds of millions of dollars in aid in exchange for Ukraine agreeing to smear Joe Biden. That should be the focus. The suppression of the whistleblower should be the focus. So there's that angle. It's also particularly hypocritical for Trump to be the one calling it out, because Trump is the king of these types of cronyistic, corrupt instances. So do I have a problem with what it is that Hunter Biden was doing? Yes, in the same way that hundreds and hundreds of relatives, friends, former politicians, et cetera, are in these positions because that's how our system is built. It is endemic corruption and cronyism, and it needs to be changed at the systemic level. But the specific conspiracy that is being built around Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, and Joe Biden saying, Hunter's in trouble because this company's being investigated. Let me get out there and start making some threats over bank guarantees. It's not the way it went down. It's been widely debunked, and it's just not anything that the facts can defend. And that's why we need to be particularly careful about. There's an immediate, Republicans don't care about this revolving door status quo of lobbyists and politicians and family members and all of this stuff. They love it, okay? And for them to now say, the real problem is that the son of a vice president was making a bunch of money as a consultant here, and then Joe Biden went out to save his ass. They don't really care about this as an issue, and they're only using this hypocritically, I might add, to distract from the real chaos, the real story, which is Trump's suppression of the whistleblower and the demand that Donald Trump made on Ukraine. So, yeah, we'll talk about it in the sense that we talk about the whole system as it works. But the acute story here is the one related to Donald Trump's actions. Hey, David, how do we move the Republican Party to the left? It's a good question, and there are basically two answers. Number one is we move the Republican Party to the left by moving the Democratic Party to the left. The second answer is we move the Republican Party to the left by working at the local level, like Republicans are so good at doing, to get left-wingers elected to school boards and city councils and PTA, whatever, at the local level, because this is how Republicans have successfully won thousands of seats, if you consider down to the local level, tens of thousands of seats even, over the last several years, several decades, actually. Number one, if we can move the Overton window to the left of national political discussions, the Republican Party is going to have to come left, at least on some issues. A lot of them have on the issue of gay marriage, for example. It feels like so long ago, but it wasn't that long ago that the Supreme Court decision in June of 2015 said you can't ban same-sex marriage at the state level. And not all, there's still a lot of money raised in evangelical circles around being anti-gay, but a lot of Republicans have just sort of forgotten about it, and they are now at least centrists on the issue of gay marriage. It's just one example. As we continue to move the conversation to the left on healthcare, the catalyst for which was Bernie Sanders back in 2016, inserting this issue in a serious way into the public discussion, overall, you are pulling Republicans to the left as well. Now, they still want free market, blah, 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 all of that stuff. But more of them are willing to make some concessions about either pre-existing conditions or whatever else. So the point is, if the Democratic Party moves to the left, it will force, because we know that the public is moving left as well, it will force the Republican Party to come somewhat to the left. And then we've got to work at the local level. I know that it sounds so boring. It sounds almost cliche. It sounds almost axiomatic to say Democrats have to be working at the local level. But Democrats just don't do it well. The Democrats don't do it well. That's the reality. And what happens is there's a sort of twofold effect. Number one, by working really well at the local level, everything from school boards to city councils to mayorships of smaller towns and cities, all that stuff. What Republicans do is they make it so that they aren't in a position to have to make things happen at the state or federal level as quickly, because they have all these people already doing it when it comes to curricula in schools, because they've got the school boards, all of these other things. If we can get involved in that, we are going to have a lot of those same successes, presumably, but also they have basically like a farm team, to use a baseball analogy. They've got the minor leagues, and they have all sorts of people from which they can handpick the most charismatic and the most sort of PR friendly, and then start winning bigger races in the House of Representatives. Some of these folks can even become senators, et cetera. So those are the two areas where Democrats need to start working right away. If we want to move the Republican Party to the left, we know the way to do it. Move ourselves to the left as leftists, both through the Democratic Party and outside of it. And we've got to start winning the local races. It's truly disheartening to see the degree to which Democrats have failed at the local level for so many years and in large swaths of the United States. Hey, David, how can I stop drowning in email? My email inbox is out of control. It feels like I spend all day on email and don't actually get my job done. WTF. Okay, so listen, there are endless strategies to deal with this. I'm not going to go through all the ones that we hear, but a common one that you hear is check email only at preset times. Check email at 9 a.m., and then 4 p.m. And then that's it. And then very often when people get that advice, they will say, but in my job, I'm not able to do that. Now, a lot of times the people who say, in my job, I'm not able to do that, they actually would be able to do it if they really thought through a way to generate expectations that you're not going to be on email all day. But this is a real problem. There are lots of jobs where 50, 60, 70% of the day is going to just keeping up with email rather than actually doing the value generation of the job. So let me concede to you, you are in one of those jobs where you can't just check email a couple times a day or something like that. I have successfully cut down my email time, I would estimate, by 75 or 80% with a very simple 3-step strategy, okay? The strategy is auto-filtering, manual triaging, and then batch processing, okay? It sounds complicated. It's not complicated at all, all right? First, you start with auto-filtering. I'll talk about for me, you apply this to yourself. I'm on a bunch of different newsletters that contain articles I might want to read or stories that might be good for the show. I've got wrap-up services of what happened on, what happened on Fox News, all these different things, so I can pick things that I want to use for the show. Anything related to, we get all sorts of emails. I mean, thousands and thousands of emails every month about people's membership payments that came in, people's membership payments that failed, new subscriptions, cancellations, all that stuff. Everything I just listed gets auto-filtered into folders. All of my newsletter services are automatically filtered out of my inbox and into a folder. Everything that's membership related gets filtered into a separate folder. I never see that stuff in my inbox. That is 90% of my email right there. Great. I'm 9/10 of the way there. Then you've got to manually triage, okay? I go through email more often than some people, and maybe I don't need to, but we do have things that come up with the production of the show, tech issues, might have to be in touch with affiliates or sales issues where I need to get involved in like figuring out whether an advertiser is a good fit for us or not or something like that. So I need to see if those urgent things come in, but those take under 30 seconds to respond to, okay? And what my goal is I never want to look at an email more than 2 times. I look at it the first time. Can I answer this email in under 30 seconds if it even needs a response? If the answer is yes, I do it. Some people say, you do your 10-second responses. Everything else gets triaged. If the email takes more than 30 seconds for me to answer, I ask myself, does this have to be done today or does this have to be done this week? If it's longer than this week, I file it and put a note in my calendar to revisit it when it needs to be revisited. If it's an email that needs to be dealt with today, I move it to a folder called Today. If it's something that needs to be done this week, I move it to a folder called This Week. And then at the end of the day, I'll go to my Today folder and one after the other deal with every email that had to be answered today. I am condensing the email answering periods of the day drastically. Anything that's under 30 seconds that really is of a more urgent nature, even though we could debate whether it's really that urgent or not, gets answered right away. And then I look at my auto-filtered stuff, membership emails, those newsletters, articles, stuff like that, once a day or every other day or whatever. This has cut down 75% on the time I spend on email. That's my suggestion. There are services that can also help with this stuff. There are some services that will gather similar types of emails and keep them out of your inbox until you want them delivered. You might say, deliver these at 4:30 p.m. and then you get them all at once, for example. I've not found the need to use those services, but I know people who have found them useful. That is my approach. Critique it, use whatever of it might be useful for you, reduce the amount of time you're spending on email because, listen, I want to be spending time researching stuff for the show, generating value, creating content. And when I cut down my email 75%, I'm drastically increasing the amount of time I can spend on just making the best possible show. We've got a great bonus show coming up for you today. Make sure to sign up at davidpakman.com/membership or at patreon.com/davidpakmanshow. I'll speak to you then.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.